Festival of the unexplained 2026 planetary shade. Never saw you were dinner far away, far away.
Hello and welcome to Festival of the Unexplained, where we are going, well, I am going to be announcing our 9th surprise guest for our event in November 2026. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to this person, then I'm going to bring them on, and then we're going to have a good chat with them. So get ready, because joining us right now is a master of true crime, a storyteller of the shadows, and a man who brings history's most chilling cases back to life. If you love mystery, crime, and the unexplained, you do not want to miss this. Our guest has appeared on Lucy Worsley's Victorian Murder Club, featured on The Unexplained, and the Netflix series Unexplained Mysteries, bringing dark history back into the spotlight for audiences around the world. So please welcome, in one moment, our guest speaker. So joining us at Festival of the Unexplained for 2026 is true crime author and police historian, the one and only Mr. Adam Wood. Welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
Hi there, Andy. Thanks very much indeed. Looking forward to having a chat with you.
Oh, 100%. So once we got past the technical issues, everything was good. It was just, it always happens. It never goes right, but we're here now, so it's all good.
But I tend to live in the Victorian era these days, so I didn't have this sort of thing then.
Do you know, it might be better, probably better technology anyway. So I'm just going to do a quick bio for people that don't know much about you.
Okay.
But I was going to say before we went live that as soon as you came on and seen you, I've recognised you straight away from TV, from Unsolved Mysteries. So I clicked straight away as to who you are now. So it makes it a lot easier. So, Adam, you are a respected British crime historian, author and speaker. You're well known for bringing the darker side of history vividly to life. Your passion for true crime began early, sparked by a chilling family connection to Jack the Ripper murders, and has since developed into decades of dedicated research, specialising in Victorian crime, like you was just saying, infamous murder cases, and the evolution of policing in the UK. They explore both well-known and overlooked cases, often focusing on your social impact and how they shape the communities. You also have played a key role in historical crime research through your long-standing involvement with Ripperologist magazine, serving as executive editor for over a decade. Very impressive.
I'm
So
old
how
and I look.
so, so how did you find out that there was the Ripper bloodline? How did you find out about the
That's not something I would claim, Andy, the Ripper bloodline. But it's quite interesting that I grew up in a household of my family's from London,
yeah,
and my granddad and his generation from the East End, and I grew up in a household. My dad massively interested in the unexplained. I remember like our bookshelves today. It had when I was growing up, we had like stuff about UFOs, the pyramids,
yeah,
giant apes, all that sort of stuff. So this festival, I should say, first and foremost, is really right up my street. But I was reading, I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I was reading a big Sunday newspaper headline about Jack the Ripper. And my
yeah,
granddad was born in Whitechapel in 1903, so a bit after the Ripper murders, but
yeah,
in
yeah.
the said, Jack the Ripper, my dad saw one of the bodies. So I sort of jumped up in the air a little bit, thought, wow, my family are involved in the Whitechapel murders in some
Yeah.
way. And as I sort of got a little bit older, I researched Jack the Ripper and I researched my family. And sure enough, my great granddad, Benjamin Wood, did live 5 minutes from where the murders took place.
Ah,
I really thought, well, I managed to rule him out as a suspect. He was only 16 at the time, but it did make me think that, wow, the ordinary people are in the area. He's been impacted by this gruesome series of murders. So he's not a witness, not a suspect or anything like that, but he was affected. And that's my approach really that I've taken ever since with all my true crime research, is that the really the human, the real life aspect of it. I'm not interested so much in the gruesomeness or the that's
yeah.
right. It's like, why did it happen? Why was that person in that
The
place?
psychological side to it all.
Social context. Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I'm interested in.
So when you started delving into it, did you ever go down any roads where you thought, do you know what, I don't want to go down this one? It was either too much mentally, or you just wasn't getting anywhere with trying to get the research that you wanted to find out what was going on?
I think it's it's tricky with the Ripper case particularly. That is obviously such a big thing there that most of the suspects have been covered by someone or other. But
Yeah.
as I said a moment ago, the who it was isn't really my sort of big interest. It's like the lives of the people that were there, the victims and everybody else that was living in the area at the time. So my research is like on a more of a lateral sort of thing. So I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
what people living in like this sort of real poverty, and how did they get out of it, and how were they affected? And quite often, if I'm doing research into someone that I find of interest in the case, I'll then go and spend like days researching their later lives. How did they end up in Whitechapel in 1888? What happened to them afterwards? Most people lived a long life, but it doesn't mean they had like a very happy life. And
No.
I seem to forget that. You think of Jack the Ripper, it's one autumn in 1888, 3 months. But in reality, that's just like part of someone's whole life, and that's what I'm interested in. And then I went off down a real wormhole. I was researching the life of the detective at Scotland Yard in charge of the Ripper investigation, whose name was Chief Inspector Donald Swanson. And I was researching him. He came from up near John O'Groat, so there was lots of research into the early days. And someone said to me, well, actually, I know the Swanson family, and they've still got lots of his papers. Would you like to meet them? So I thought that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it turned out they live in Worcester. What a coincidence.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I was at the time living in the Cotswolds, and I was sort of going into Worcester quite regularly, meeting the great grandson of Swanson. And literally, they had all these papers and his letters, everything from his personal things to his police notebooks. And they just let me to have free reign to go through it all. So I was the first person to look at all this material. And it was, as I say, because of the social context, it's what I wanted. I made a photograph everything, and I wrote a biography of Swanson, and it was about 750 pages.
Wow.
It's just everything.
Wow.
And I was turning up all sorts of things that no one's ever sort of knew about before, really. Touching the document that someone in history has also sort of had their hands on was amazing. So I was looking at it from the police angle, and then that led me to researching the police history, the formation, the detective branch being formed. So it's the whole history that's sort of building up to this one moment. And of course, because I was researching Swanson and his police career, I was looking at some real big Victorian cases that hardly have been investigated because everyone's so focused on Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a bit short-sighted of a lot of researchers, because that's their fix, fair enough. But I think context. And because of that, as I said, I met the Swanson family, really lovely people. They've sort of loaned objects. They've let me, in fact, they've sort of gifted me some stuff which I've given back now.
Oh wow!
But it's just sort of my interest in Swanson that I did get involved with Lucy Worsley's BBC programme that was on earlier this year, because I had an email from the producers for Warner Brothers saying that we need someone to talk about Swanson's investigation into what's known as the Thames Torso murders, and that's what Lucy Worsley's programme was about. And they said, well, you are obviously the expert on Donald Swanson, can you come in and talk about that? And that was a bit of a strange experience.
Wow. Well, I was just going to ask, so I was just going to say, so through going through Swanson's notebooks and papers and all that, I'm guessing that took you down different rabbit holes, not just obviously Jack the Ripper, but all different cases that he was doing. So did you ever kind of like get sidetracked from that to go and investigate the others? Well, not investigate, but look deeper into the other accounts the other cases that he was looking at?
Absolutely. I mean, that probably, although I'd been interested in other Victorian crime for a long time before that happened, and this is probably 10, 12 years ago, something like that, I really opened my eyes up to realise that, Swanson investigates some major cases, and obviously some cases no one's ever heard of before. And I spent equally as long researching those as I did the Ripper crime. So consequently, I just had a massive respect for this guy, because although he was the lead investigator at Scotland Yard, and the accounts that you read of his involvement are really quite a stressful time for him. I'll give you an example. His wife was pregnant with twins at the time investigating the Ripper crimes. One of them died. They were both born early, but one of them died. And obviously she was affected by stress about how her husband was coping with this investigation. Massive amount of pressure on his shoulders from, the press and the government. And it obviously was translating at home. So this sort of affected it all the way down. But I thought, this guy's he's got an amazing career. He ended up superintendent of the CID at Scotland Yard, so really high. But it made me go off and research all the other stuff that he looked into. And then from there, I've gone on to other cases that he didn't himself work on. But it just sort of gives me like a much better and a wider range of understanding of Victorian crime. And the beautiful thing of it, that you say Victorian murder and people think of the Ripper, obviously. But this sort of stuff happens locally, and I give lots of talks. Where I live now, I give lots of talks to history groups and WIs, that sort of thing. And I always try and find something in the newspapers that relates to where the venue is. And I never fail. And people just tend to think, well, gruesome murder doesn't happen round here. It's only in London. Well, of course it does. So
you just don't hear about it.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm just really interested in like the human side of this. So, and I think Victorian history, it's almost like a sort of a romantic effect to it. You've got them old sketches in the paper because they didn't have photography papers then. It almost makes it seem like a little bit of a romantic stuff. So what I try and do with my work is to sort of underline this is actually real life. These people did die. It's not the romance that you sort of like see it presented as.
But I suppose it gives you the headset then of thinking the way the Victorians thought and how they went about their daily life. So then it makes it, when you carrying on doing this further in your career, it makes it easier for you to look at the things that us, if we was to do it, we'd miss. We won't even have a clue that these other bits and pieces that you're picking up straight away.
Yeah,
we won't even see them where straight away they just stand out to you.
I think this is it, and a big part of the Victorian history, and not just the crime, but the police history, is the fact that the laws were changing all the time. You know, Victorian period was a time where the legal process was changing. They were inventing laws or tweaking laws to fit the crime in a way. And one thing that I talk about quite a lot, or write about quite a lot, is unfortunately the Victorian era was a period where there were lots of what should we say, newborn babies found that had been killed because there was no sort of safety net for unmarried mums. Obviously, lots of women were employed in service, so if they got pregnant by, you know, whoever, when they was unmarried, they were sort of stressed they were going to lose their job. There was no sort of safety net, and in fact, it wasn't until the early 20th century when the welfare state came in supporting children. So it was a stressful time. You know, if you're a 20-year-old woman and you get pregnant and you give birth, and you're going to lose your job if you keep that child.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for it, a good, strong social reason but then because I know this, I can understand when I read of these sort of crimes. You know, a body's been found in a canal, for instance, or by the railway track. I know straight away why. But a lot of people don't. So when you look at it thinking, how those women were really heartless doing what they did, but not having that sort of deep understanding perhaps of the daily life in the Victorian era.
Yeah, so that makes it more sense now when you say about the social aspects to everything, like the everyday living, what was going on work-wise. Like you said, a lot of people like were in service, or they was working in the mills, I suppose. Back then it was like the Industrial Revolution, wasn't it? So
and you've got to remember, of course, is that people didn't have lots of disposable income, so you know they weren't owning their own accommodation or their houses. They basically would be living where they could, close to the work. If they were working in a cotton mill or something like that, they'd be living nearby. But if they lost work, if they weren't working, they couldn't afford the rent on that place, and then they'd be out on the street. It's a weekly, it's constant pressure to be working to, you know, keep that roof over your head. And they'd be like, you know, husband and wife, husband would be out of work. The woman would at the time be looking after the family. There might be 10 kids. So there's lots of pressure and there's, you know, constant cycle. If you've got to earn the money, hard work, arguments in the family, domestic abuse, the husband's out drinking, and you end up with this sort of cycle. And this is where a lot of Victorian crime comes from, is that pressure, the daily grind of having family, and then unfortunately massive frustration under the roof. And this is all common.
And that's where the changing of the policing system at the time, as you like you said, was updating, because obviously the working life is changing by the day as well. So they've got to keep up with everything that's going on.
I mean,
that's a lot. That's a lot to research.
I think it is, but it's almost it's a pleasure.
If you enjoy it, it's not work.
How do I sleep spending all my time researching these gruesome, grisly murders? But it's just rounding out a lifestyle. You know, I mean, regarding the police history, initially when the police were formed in 1829, so kind of for 200 years ago, there weren't any detectives. All the police were there was just to pound the beat in the uniform to basically dissuade people from doing wrong. And if a burglary or something or a murder is committed and they got away with it, there was no way of tracing who had done it. And it wasn't until 1840, so a good 20 years later, the detective branch was formed. And even then, through 20 odd years of development until they got the right people in there. And then there was a massive, in the 1870s, there was a massive corruption scandal because all the detectives at Scotland Yard were being bribed by this group of wrong-uns across Europe, tip them off when they were close to being caught. So then they had to completely reset the detective department, became the CID. This is when Swanson became a detective, for example, and they had to sort of prove himself again. So it's it's nothing new. All that sort of going right back to the Victorian
started
period.
At the very beginning.
yeah, and they're constantly evolving, trying to create a good police force. But when you're in a position of power, I suppose it's easy to sort of take that little backhander.
Yeah, I suppose. That is so interesting. So without giving too much away, because you don't want to tell everyone what you're going to be doing. So,
Yeah.
at the event in Worcester in November, can you give us an idea of what you're going to be talking about? What obviously you're going to be talking about true crime and that, but what accounts? Which way are you going to go into it?
I've had quite a bit of discussion with the organisers about the subject matter, and I think it would be really nice to find something very local to where the festival's taking place. So I'm currently researching Worcester Victorian crime, and I think it'd be quite good to because then you're almost on the spot where these things happen. And I think that sometimes if you make it more tangible than just reading about an account in a book, if you're on the spot, and I'm not promising I'll find a gruesome murder in the hotel itself, but you never know.
Well, you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So
no.
I will keep.
I was going to say, have you started your research into Worcester yet, or are you waiting until nearer?
I mean, to be honest, where it sounds like really makes me sound quite intense. But when I book to do an event somewhere, I love to find something local. So I go to the British newspaper archive online, and I literally will search for Worcester murder, and then narrow it down to the Victorian period, and then I'll be trawling through. Because believe me, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of Victorian murders in Worcester.
Well, it's an old market town anyway. It's like dates back, God, was it 1100?
It's
something
really,
like that.
Yeah. So there's lots there.
I think you'll find a few bits.
Sorry, Andy, say again.
I think you'll find a few bits and pieces that you need.
As I say, I've found a lot. It's trimming through it. That's going to take the time.
Right. Yeah.
But I think the thing about Worcester, I've been there several times. It's a lovely place.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of it hasn't changed. So you can easily sort of see, and hopefully I'll come up with one or more cases where people that are attending the festival can sort of visit for themselves, and really you get a real feel of actually this really happened, and this is where it did happen.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm really looking forward to it, all the speakers and everything. So is there anything else you can say without giving too much away
about the talk?
About anything?
Again, my mind always goes racing with on an invitation like this, which is actually fantastic. I said at the start, I grew up in a household with loads of books about devil worshipping and all this sort of thing. So I'll be in the front row listening to all the speakers myself. But I did wonder about potential of doing creating like a small walking tour, a true crime walking tour. Somewhere in a schedule. That's something to discuss with the organisers, I know. But there's so much that people can be, I think, sort of involved in. And again, I mean, I'll be on hand the whole weekend. I'll be really pleased to have any sort of discussions with anyone. Every person, hopefully it's not all about Jack the Ripper, but everybody has got some favourite crime case, shall we say, an old case or whatever. And, believe me, I have researched a lot of them, so I've got something to say about a lot of old murders.
A question for you, because I'm originally from Manchester. Have you ever done any work around the Manchester area?
I haven't yet, but interestingly, that is on my list because I am aware there are several sort of events, weekends up in Manchester based on sort of murder mysteries and crime, that sort of thing. I'm sure you've seen that sort of thing. So I've been thinking, well, maybe a Manchester-based thing could be really interesting, like either an event or a book. I'm just working on a Birmingham collection of Victorian crime. So these sort of volumes are always popular, and I think if they're properly researched and of a certain age, they're not quite as scary as something that happened, say, 20 years ago.
I've got a question for you from Lynn Peters. So she wants to know, Adam, who do you admire in your field?
Oh, well, I admire so many people. The people I admire most, and this isn't to the detriment of anyone else, if I don't name a particular person, I mean I don't admire them, but there are people that you might not have heard of, like Deborah Arif. She's a absolutely fantastic researcher. Hasn't written a book, hasn't published a book, and no interest in publishing a book. Never appeared
Oh.
on TV, but her work is
Yeah.
absolutely unbelievable. You know, if you ever find anything on socials or Facebook with Debs's name on there, her research, she'll find stuff that no one else could find.
Wow.
She's amazing. So anybody that really takes the time to dig away, and they're not just trying to rush out something for the sake of making some money or make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
Being patient and actually doing the hard graft in any form of life is, you know, I think the way to go. But certainly in crime and policing research, is that's it. So Deb's, there's Suzanne Huntington's just released a book on the Thames Torso murders that came out around about the same time as Lucy Worsley's TV program.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the sort of people that I really look up to. And again, if you're looking at in terms of public speaking, that sort of thing, I think, again, potentially the people that would present a story or present a case in a non-glamorous way. There's nothing turns me off reading a book or watching something on TV if it's made to look too glamorous.
Yeah. So are you going to go dark, like dark with your talk?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
even better. Yes.
if I'm talking about the Ripper case, for instance, I want to stay true to the case,
exactly how it is.
the mortuary photographs rather than like the sketch, because that's what happened, and I'll explain why those pictures were taken. But you know, I won't be shying away from a bloody description or something like that, but it won't be the shining point, if you like, about it, because it's the real, it's reality,
the real deal. Yeah. So I'm guessing you're going to bring in some documents and cases and all that kind of stuff with you to show.
Yeah. I've got quite everything I open my mouth, it makes me sound like really quite bizarre.
No, it's so interesting. Honestly, it really is.
But I've got a collection of a few crime memorabilia pieces, mostly what they call broadsides or sketches, court sketches of the criminal. And not because, it's great. I've got this picture of, say, William Corder, who was the murderer in a famous case of murder in the Red Barn. It was actually in the news last week because some pieces came up for auction. His collection, or from his time in prison, I should say. Quite a famous case. I've got an original hand-coloured engraving of him in court. He was sentenced and executed. I've got that because it's really like a piece of history showing how they recorded these things. You couldn't take a photograph. In fact, you still can't take a photograph in court, but you couldn't take a photograph of someone arriving at court, publish it in a newspaper. The only way you do it is these court artists creating the sketches, and then it would be sort of, you know, very small number. So I mean, I've never seen that particular piece that I've got up for sale again. I've got 2 or 3 pieces like that. So I'm planning to bring some pieces along. Yeah. Really historical interest rather than sort of like the just the murder attachment, really. Yeah.
No, thank you. So got a few minutes left. So I've got another question from Kimberly May, which is what I was going to ask you anyway. So she wants to know, what do you hope that people are going to take away from your talks?
I'm hoping, as I do all the time, but certainly at Worcester, I'm really hope that people will come along, enjoy the talk and find it interesting, and then go away actually thinking, well, my previous interest in Jack the Ripper or other crime might have been drawn to it by like the gruesome nature, but I got away thinking about it in a different way, and look at it perhaps in my approach, where it's just like the day-to-day life of, you know, the people involved, or the situation why these people end up where they did.
Sorry, can you still hear me?
I can, Andy. Yeah. So you've slipped into the Victorian era now.
It does this all the time. So sorry about this. My camera's gone off and I can't do anything to switch it back on unless I restart the computer. So I will have to carry on like this for now, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So just ask you what you hope people will take away from your talk. What are you hoping to gain and take away from your experience at Festival of the Unexplained?
I think what I'd really take, as I said a moment ago, I'd be really interested in the discussion of the topics anyway, because it's an interest of mine aside
Yeah.
from the crime. But what I'd quite like is to sort of see how historic true crime and the mysteries around some of the cases that are unsolved, or the motives in certain crimes, might be something that can sit alongside perhaps some of the more, what should we say, supposed mysteries like UFOs and ghosts like that.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know whether people might think true crime is along that same lines, but to me, I think it is. So you know, I'd be very interested to see how those two, how my topic, my subject of interest, can sort of marry up with the rest of the weekend's events. Really.
Yeah. Ah, excellent. So, with you saying you're going to be bringing, sorry, I'm just trying to get the computer to work, but it is not doing anything. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump onto my mobile because
Okay.
otherwise I can't end the stream. So, once I get on, and then I'll have to find a way. I'll come back in, but I'm going to switch the computer off.
Okay.
So, as soon as it connects on the mobile, I'll shut the computer down. Otherwise,
Okay.
you're going to get a ton of echo.
All right.
Hello?
Oh,
Hi, can you hear me?
I certainly can. Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to restart the computer because I can't. It does it every so often. I think it does an update and it's just, there's nothing I can do when it does that. So, yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on and telling us everything that's going on and what you're going to be talking about.
No, pleasure.
See, I've always had an interest in the true crime side, but I think, I'm not just saying it, yours is different because you're doing it a different way. You're not just telling the same old story, what happened, when it happened, who the victims were and all that kind of stuff. You're going down, like you say, the everyday, the
Yeah.
day-to-day life of everything that went on. So it just makes a massive difference. And I think it gives it that edge, that extra interest as to what life was like at the time.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And I mean, I always say that although it's an unusual or extraordinary subject, it should be quite boring because it's everyday life.
Yeah.
It's bad things happening to ordinary people. That's all it is, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I'm just getting the computer to come back on now. So I do apologize for this.
No problem.
Right. Just I don't think it's going to do it.
Yeah, you have to. Are you doing your own feature, Andy? Unexplained technical mishaps.
Oh, I might have to. Right. Yeah, my camera's not working, so I'm gonna have to carry on my phone. So do apologise.
That's fine.
Can you hear me okay still?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. Right. I'm gonna end it here if
Okay.
that's okay. So a massive thank you, Adam, for coming on. Right, I can hear myself in the headphones. It's doing me head in. Yeah, I can't wait to meet up and listen to you talk and have a chat with you and what have you, and have a look at what the documents and everything you're going to be bringing.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good weekend. I'm really looking forward to it and meeting everybody.
Yeah, same here. So if you haven't already, get your tickets. They are going to be selling fast. So there are different ticket prices available. If you go to www.festivalyunexplained.com, you can go on there. You can go on the Facebook group, a couple other places, but I can't access anything on the computer. I was going to pop them up, but it's decided to stop working. So I do apologise for this. But no, great to speak to you, Adam, and thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, we'll have a chat after we finish, if that's all right.
Yeah, of
Once
course.
we've
Yeah.
gone off air. All right then. So yeah, get your tickets if you haven't already. And that was guest number 9. And I think next week we're going to be jumping on to talking about the different workshops that we're going to be doing at Festival of the Unexplained 2026. It's the weekend of the 6th, 7th and 8th of November. So get online, get looking for your tickets, get booking them and get started, because you're going to miss one of the best events of this year. So that's it. Oh, there we go. Can I do it? Yes. There we go. Karen's put the link up. So www.festivalunexplained.com. That's it. So I'm going to end it now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the chat. And then we'll be back, like I said, next Monday, 7:30, where we're going to talk workshops, I think. I think there's other things as well, but just off the top of my head, that's all I can go with. All right, then. I'll speak to you soon. Take care, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Festival of the unexplained 2026 planetary shade. Never saw you were dinner far away, far